Happy holiday, everyone, and welcome back to RoxomTV. I'm your host, Jamie, and today I'm bringing you all the global news that happened during this holiday season that you might have missed. Well, US shutdown risk is back again, and this time it might be worse than last time. Last time we barely survived a 6-week shutdown in late 2025, and we lost $11 billion. It just evaporated in the US economy. Another threat that we are facing today and happened just 3 days ago, it was Bitcoin crashed to 24K on Binance, and it was mainly due to a liquidity issue, but we're going to dive into whether that is posing any actual threat to Bitcoin. We're also going to look at the Trust wallet because it just got hacked 3 days ago again, and $7 million was stolen. So the question we are asking is self-custodian wallet actually safe, and is there any concern to your private keys, especially to folks who are watching this channel or happen to use Trust Wallet? So this stories and more, we're going to get into that in a bit. But first thing first, since today is Macro Monday, let's start with a little bit of macro and also a little bit of TA for Bitcoin. So we're starting from the daily chart of Bitcoin. One thing I like about the daily chart is that Bitcoin is trying to break out of this general downtrend. So this general downtrend we've been building up since 6th of October. We touched the all-time high of 126K. Right now, Bitcoin is, well, we almost close above the general downtrend at $87,000. And let's see if this daily candle we managed to stay above or end up being another wick, because we have witnessed that before, actually multiple times, 1, 2, 3, and Bitcoin just touching it and get rejected again. So in the coming hours, it's going to be critical whether Bitcoin managed to stay above this general downtrend. If so, maybe December, after all, we managed to close with a flat number instead of a red December, because this also aligned with the TA that I gave out a month ago on RoxomTV. Consolidation period actually aligned perfectly with the TA predictions that I gave. And another bullish signal I'm seeing from the daily chart is that we have a rising support on the Bitcoin's price. So a rising floor price from 83K. So whenever we touch this support line, Bitcoin ends up bouncing back, and this also supported by the rising RSI. So one thing I like to see on the daily chart, so at least on the immediate reaction of Bitcoin, perhaps maybe we're gonna stay above this rising support on the RSI, both on the RSI and also from the Bitcoin's actual price action. So in the coming days and maybe perhaps coming weeks, we might experience more like a relief rally, which also coherent with what we predicted a month ago. So what I'm saying here, general, we're still in a bear market, still in a general downtrend after all, but like we still, it's normal to see a relief rally, a little pump in a bear market, because nothing gonna go straight to hell. We're still gonna see like pumps like this. So at the moment, looks like we are heading to a relief rally like this. This is also why I predicted that December might be end up with a flat number, somewhat flat number. Hopefully we could close this with a slightly positive, maybe like a 0 point something percent positive, or even 1 to 2%. But there are only 2 days left in December. From judging from a daily chart perspective, looks like there's more consolidation, so a little relief rally is on the way. This is at least speaking from a short-term mentality, because we are looking at the immediate return, the coming days we're talking about. Let's also hop onto the weekly chart and look at the zoom out and look at the ground scheme of things. So one thing about the weekly chart, let's pull up the Ichimoku cloud. This also aligned with the prediction that I gave 1 month ago. The reason why I managed to call this like chop rather well, because like December so far the return is minus 0.35%, so somewhat flat number. The reason why I managed to call that perfectly is because of the Ichimoku cloud. So the Ichimoku cloud is a leading indicator. Right now, Bitcoin is just like chopping around inside this cloud. It's building that momentum. So in other words, in the coming days or even in the coming weeks, 104K is going to be the top. So I won't be surprised that if in the coming weeks, if we rally to 104K, but like if we manage to stay above that, I have my doubt. Like so far, it's not looking like there's too much bullish signal from the long-term perspective. But again, 100K or 104K, that is doable. And however, I will still classify this as a bear market. The reason why, because judging from a technical standpoint, any price below 108K, that is a technical bear market. The reason why I'll say this, because it was the previous all-time high. So that was back all the way in December last year. And also we touched 108K back in January 2025. And yet again, we have been using that at the level of support. So the previous level of support is going to be our future resistance, and this is playing out rather well. In other words, 108K, anything below that, this is still a bear market after all. So what we could do right now, if Bitcoin happens to follow this pattern exactly like I predicted, we could do a few trades if of course not financial advice, but like personally what I've been doing is that if we haven't de-risked, if we haven't sold our altcoins yet, because I'm really bearish on altcoins. If you have been watching my analysis, you know the reason why. And this would be a perfect opportunity if you guys haven't de-risked in this bear market, maybe take a little bit of profit of your altcoins. If some folks don't like to sell the position, still want to hold on to the spot position, maybe it's a good idea to pull some short contracts and short positions instead without using any leverage, because I do not advise my viewers using leverage, especially in a volatile market like this. But having the risk that risk management mentality will help you go a very long way. So this is what I spotted from the weekly. And another reason why that I still think this is a bear market, despite having having the possibility of rallying to 103K. The reason why, okay, number one is the 108K, that magical number. Reason number two, let's remove that resistance line. Reason number two is that if we focus only on the Ichimoku cloud, and if we zoom closer, the red line has officially taken over of that green line. And this is again a bearish signal. So Ichimoku cloud being a leading indicator and showcase where Bitcoin might be heading to in that direction. And last time when we were inside the cloud, that was back in January 2022, and we essentially spent like 3 months inside this cloud, so like 100 days inside this cloud. I'm not saying history will repeat, but it often rhymes. So during this consolidation period, it's still possible that Bitcoin will pump to 104K, like if you pull a few trades. enter at 88 and exit at 104K is still a generous, like 17%. Of course, not financial advice. I'm just sharing you some of the strategy out there that people are quite commonly using. So in other words, since we've only spent 42 days inside this EG Mega Cloud, more likely or not, we're going to stay inside this cloud or actually have some relief rally. But according to last cycle, we spent roughly 100 days inside this EG Mega Cloud. That will bring us to February 2026 before heading lower. So zooming out, very likely we're going to see this bear market. So possibly how it play out is that we saw the dump, and then we have the relief rally before going to lower places. And how low could we possibly go? This is another question, and we have to now pull out the 200-week moving average. So there are essentially just two lines to focus on. The blue line is the 50-week moving average, and the red line is the 200-week moving average. General rule of thumb is that when Bitcoin lost the 50-week for 2 consecutive weekly candles, we're going to essentially head to the 200-week moving average. So right now is $56,000. So if we carry on, we're going to see perhaps we're going to stretch that out to October 2026 if we are a believer of the 4-year cycle. So it will be roughly around 60K region. The reason why I didn't call 56 or 57K is because essentially what this 200-week moving average does is that it smooths out the price action. So it's not going to be as volatile, as high as, as low as the current price. So the moving average slowly going to catch up. So by the time we reach October 2026, that will be somewhere around 60K. This is just a rough reference we have to look at. And if we combine that with the macro, what the macro has been doing, let's pull up the liquidity, the global liquidity. So the yellow line right here, and also the Fed balance sheet, that are essentially the two key lines, two key indicators we have to look at if we're trying to do the macro analysis. So the blue line being the federal balance sheet and the yellow line being the global liquidity. So the reason why we're looking at global liquidity is because if we zoom out, that essentially following perfectly well with the global liquidity. So the yellow line right here. So usually Bitcoin will lag the global liquidity by 3 months, but like when the global liquidity goes up, Bitcoin will catch up essentially. So that's why when people hear rate cuts, they are really happy. And when they hear about QE has officially started, actually QE has been starting on 12th of December. The Fed right now is buying around $40 billion per month for short-term government debt. Of course, it's not like a massive QE. So if we close the global liquidity and go ahead and pull up the balance sheet of the Federal Reserve, what the ending QT means is that instead of like going down, keep going down, ending QT means essentially we're going to go sideways. And QE, of course, that means the balance sheet number are going to go up. But right now, we're not seeing a huge effect at the moment. And I have talked about that last month when Jerome Powell stated that QT is going to come to an end very soon. The reason why we're not seeing that impact on the balance sheet of Fed going up like insane, because what they're doing is that they are essentially letting mortgage-backed securities run off instead of buying new mortgage-backed securities. So What it means is that if we hop onto the breakdown of the balance sheet of the Fed, the balance sheet mostly made up of two assets, so treasury and mortgage-backed securities. So the total right now sitting at $6.5 trillion. That is the total assets of the Fed balance sheet. So what this essentially means is that they will just let the mortgage-backed securities pay off. So they're much rather to hold short-term treasuries and let MBS slowly disappear because people will pay down their mortgages. So they're not actively getting into the housing market because they're trying to reduce their influence in the housing market. They much rather focus on the government debt in the short term. They are framing that as not QE, but like essentially, if you're going out and purchasing government bonds, whether it's short-term bonds or long-term bonds, that is still a form of QE. But since they are not purchasing MBS, so being this line right here, that's the MBS line. So MBS, they would just let it to mature instead of purchasing more, while they are adding treasury bonds, not like a huge amount. So they have officially stated they'll be buying $40 billion per month. Like if we zoom out and looking at the trend, especially being reflected on the weekly chart, it's not going to place a huge effect on the general balance sheet, and it's also not going to place a huge effect on the Bitcoin price. So macro scheme of things, again, it takes time, but it's slowly improving. And the Fed right now, it doesn't leave much decision for the Fed to make. Then they have to essentially sacrifice the inflation being above 2%. But right now, since unemployment rate is really taking up, the labor market is looking weak, and they have to finance the government debt. So that's why they are lowering the rates, and that's why they are purchasing the government debt a little bit. So let's get into the US shutdown story. And because it feels like we just escaped a government shutdown, but the truth is the threat is already back. So the US badly survived a 6-week shutdown in late 2025, and now we are walking straight toward another one. And the scary part is the Democrats aren't even saying what their plan is yet, and the 30th of January funding deadline is getting close. That silence usually means trouble, and this time it's not just politics at risk, it's economy in the markets and basically your money. So let's rewind for a second. In late 2025, the US went through the longest government shutdown in history, so about 6 weeks. What happened during that time? Over 800,000 workers were unpaid. Flights were cut because of staff shortages, government services slowed or even stopped, and consumer confidence dropped hard. The economy took a massive hit. The GDP growth dropped around 0.1 to 0.3%. People spend less, so a lot of what Donald Trump is doing is actually deflationary. The shutdown finally ended in mid-November, but the damage did not disappear. And right now, here's the key part. The government needs to pass a new funding deal by 30th of January. Right now, Democrats are staying quiet, no clear budget plan, and no public compromise. That usually means behind the scenes they are fighting. Markets hate uncertainty, and this is the kind that slowly kills confidence. When the government shutdown hit, the Fed stepped in quietly. So this is the reason why throughout December they have stopped tightening and quietly buying $40 billion in bonds per month. Of course, they don't call it QE, but let's be real. It kind of is. QE. This helped calm markets and push stocks higher, but it's small support, not a rescue. So the bigger problem that our economy, and especially the US economy, is facing right now is fiscal dominance. So if we zoom out and look at the bigger picture, the US is now drowning in debt. The debt is over 120% of GDP. Interest payments are bigger than the military budget. That means the Fed cannot freely fight inflation anymore. They are trapped. If rates stay high, the system breaks. If rates go lower, inflation comes back. And this is why you call the fiscal dominance. And because of this situation, the US economy brought us into, we are seeing effects on some commodities market. And for example, gold. Gold is absolutely exploding. It's up 70%, and central banks around the world are buying because people want to flock to safetiness. Gold right now is sitting at $44.77, and it's showing no sign of slowing down whatsoever. And not only gold is going up like crazy, another commodity is silver. So silver hit a new all-time high, right now sitting at $75. So silver is up over 140%. Bitcoin, however, is going through a bear market. There will be some catching up for Bitcoin to do, but when that happens, we know it's going to be an exponential one. So what's this mean for us going into 2026? So here's the simple truth. The economy is slowing down. That keeps rising. Governments can't cut spending, and money printing never really going to end. So that's why gold benefits first, and so as silver and Bitcoin going to follow next. Cash slowly lose power. The shutdown threat is a warning sign, not a one-off event. We are entering a world where crises like this going to come more often. Governments rely on money printing to get out of any bad situation, and any hard asset will quietly win. The question isn't if things break again, it's a matter of when, and when they do, the people who understand this early will be ready for it. So next, we're also going to get into more news about the situation between Europe and US and also in Ukraine. But before we do that, let's take a little break, and I'll see you guys with more news to come.
Security matters. Zappo Bank, the only way to bank your Bitcoin. Apply now at zappobank.com.
Some call me Chicken Little, others Bubble Boy. I'm a bit changed, but sounds familiar, right? Let me tell you a hard truth. The S&P isn't rising, the dollar's falling. That's the trick, monopoly money. It's ice melting by the second. Your savings, your salary, your time. Worth less every second. Everyone's using the wrong measuring stick. Switch the denominator. Price the S&P into Bitcoin. Hard, fixed, unprintable. Suddenly your unstoppable index, it's collapsing. And while you cling to dollars, well, Wall Street already switched. Before, you needed 2 brokers.
Still getting my ninja bonus though, right?
Fuck. Plenty of spreadsheets. And my quant!
I hate this part.
I was right, and I'll be right again. If I were you, I'd thank me.
You know my name's Dave, right?
Welcome back, everyone, and here are some updates on the war that is happening in Ukraine. It feels like the peace is getting closer, but at the same time, the war might be entering its most dangerous phase. Ukraine just confirmed a new $2.5 billion worth of aid package from Canada, and while at the same time talking about demilitarization and freezing the war. That sounds confusing, right? More money, but also talks about pulling back troops. So let's break it down what's really happening and why this matters now. So on 27th of December, Ukraine's President Zelensky confirmed a $2.5 billion Canadian aid package that is worth roughly 1.8 billion USD. This money is not mainly for weapons, it's for keeping the economy running, rebuilding damaged areas, supporting IMF programs, and helping Ukraine survive financially. This was confirmed during Zelensky's visit to Canada, where he also spoke with European leaders. So, yes, the West is really backing Ukraine. At the same time, something big changed. Ukraine is now open to demilitarization talks. This essentially includes creating demilitarized zones, pulling troops out, and freezing the front lines without officially giving out any land. This is a huge shift. Ukraine has resisted this for years. Now they're considering it because the war is dragging on, resources are stretched, and people are exhausted. What the polls show is that 72% of Ukrainians support a freeze if security is guaranteed, but only 9% believe the war will end before 2026. So, in other words, people want peace, but they don't trust it yet. This is where many people get confused. Like, why send billions if peace talks are happening? This is because demilitarization doesn't mean instant peace. Ukraine still needs money to function, and cities still need rebuilding. Not to mention, defense is still needed if talks fail. This aid helps Ukraine negotiate from strength, not desperation. Without it, Ukraine risks economic crisis, and that would force bad deals. But what about the US? Like, what is the US saying right now, what Donald Trump is doing? After meeting Zelensky on 28th of December, Donald Trump is saying that peace is closer than ever. Talks were very productive and about 90% of a peace framework is agreed. He also spoke directly with Putin and says negotiations could move fast in 2026. Donald Trump believes pressure and also with a proper deal, there will come a day of peace. But here's the reality. Demilitarization could reduce fighting, but it also reduces freezing the conflict instead of ending it. So, what if talks fail? If so, things could get messy rather fast. So, in other words, we are at a turning point. This isn't about who wins or loses headlines. It's about whether the world moves toward peace or deeper division. Ukraine is walking a tightrope, so they accept help, they avoid surrender, and protect its future. In other words, the next coming weeks will matter more than most people realize. While geopolitics continues to shape the global market, not all risks are coming from the battlefield. Some of the biggest shocks right now are coming from inside the tech world itself. Everyone in Korea uses Coupang, but right now, Coupang is facing one of the biggest scandals in its history. Over 30 million users' data was exposed. The company is paying $1.1 billion in compensation, and lawsuits are piling up both in Korea and also in the US. So, what really happened, and should users and investors be worried? Let's break it down, simple and clear. So, Coupon is basically the Amazon of Korea, based in the US but operates mainly in Korea, known for super fast delivery, sometimes even same day delivery or next day delivery. They are a huge deal, especially in Korea. They have over 95,000 employees and around $30 billion in revenue. fully backed by SoftBank and listed on the New York Stock Exchange. For many Koreans, coupon is part of the daily life, but what actually happened, what went down, is that back in November this year, Coupon reviewed a massive data breach. A former employee kept access to internal systems for months, from June to November, and during that time, names were leaked, emails were leaked, home addresses were leaked, and all the history was exposed. This affected around 34 million people. That's around 2/3 of South Korea's population. And when this happened, the reaction was brutal. Public outrage exploded. The CEO of Coupon actually resigned and the government stepped in. Then came the big move. Coupon announced it will pay 1.7 trillion won, which is about 1.1 billion US dollars. Each affected users would get 50,000 won, that is $34 in US, can be used on coupon services. You can claim it starting on 15th of January next year. This is one of the largest data breach payouts in Korean history. So this is where it gets serious. In Korea, nearly 500,000 people joined a class action, demanding up to $80 per person, while in the US, investors filed lawsuits claiming Coupon hit cyber risk. They said the company misled investors before the breach, and one lawsuit alone is even asking for $14 billion. And that, of course, is massive. So why this matter beyond just Coupon? This isn't just one company. This case could change data protection laws in Korea, pressure global tech companies, scare investors in US listed Asian firms. It also shows how dangerous data leaks are, even without stolen money. So, in other words, trust is everything. What's happening with Coupon is more than just a tech scandal. It's a reminder of how fragile digital trust really is. When personal data can be exposed at this scale, people naturally start asking deeper questions about who controls the information, the money, and the future. And that's where Bitcoin quietly comes back into conversation, not as a quick trade, but as an alternative system built on transparency, decentralization, and self custody, especially in a country like South Korea, where digital platforms are deeply woven into daily life. Moments like this can shift how people think about trust and control. It doesn't mean everyone runs to Bitcoin tomorrow, but it does remind people why it exists in the first place. And in times like this, that questions matter more than ever. Next, we're also going to dive into more hack and more money being lost. But before we do that, let's take a short break and we're going to bring you to more news in a bit.
Security matters. Zappo Bank, the only way to bank your Bitcoin. Apply now at zappobank.com.
Some call me Chicken Little, others Bubble Boy. I'm a bit changed, but sounds familiar, right? Let me tell you a hard truth. The S&P isn't rising, the dollar's falling. That's the trick, monopoly money. It's ice melting by the second. Your savings, your salary, your time. Worth less every second. Everyone's using the wrong measuring stick. Switch the denominator. Price the S&P into Bitcoin. Hard, fixed, unprintable. Suddenly your unstoppable index, it's collapsing. And while you cling to dollars, well, Wall Street already switched. Before, you needed 2 brokers.
Still getting my ninja bonus though, right?
Plenty of spreadsheets. And my quant!
I hate this part.
I was right, and I'll be right again. If I were you, I'd thank me.
You know my name's Dave, right?
Welcome back, everyone. I'm your host, Shami, bringing you more news in the crypto world. So, one of the biggest crypto wallets in the world just got hacked, and millions of users were affected. About $7 million in crypto was stolen, not from some shady app, but from Trust Wallet itself. So, if you guys do not know what is Trust Wallet, so Trust Wallet is one of the biggest crypto wallets in the world with over 100 million users owned by Binance, fully non-custodian, meaning you control your own keys. And what happened in mid-December, so a few days ago, hackers targeted Trust Wallet's Chrome extension, so not the mobile app version. The problem came from a compromised update. Here's what happened. Hackers gained access to Trust Wallet's update system. A malicious version, so version 2.68, was uploaded to the Chrome store. Users unknowingly installed it and funds were quietly drained from their wallets. This was a classic supply chain attack, not a normal attack, not a normal hack. Roughly $7 million was stolen, and this wasn't about bad passwords. The attackers, how they pull it is that they exploited Trust Wallet's update system, bypassed security checks, and used official channels to spread malicious code. Because it looked official, users had no warning. And that's what makes it so scary. And for the response of Trust Wallet, once they detected, Trust Wallet pulled the bad extension and released a patch version, so being version 2.69. Most importantly, they promised to fully reimburse affected users. They launched an official claims portal on 28th of December, so just a few hours ago. The CEO personally addressed the community, and Binance also confirmed their support. This isn't just a Trust Wallet problem. What it shows is how risky browser extension can be and how supply chain attacks are growing in these day and age. Even trusted brands can fail if internal systems are compromised. And this is not the only incident from Binance that happened literally this week. If you open your phone on Christmas Eve and saw Bitcoin crash to $24,000, you probably thought, like, did I miss a total collapse? What happened? Why did Bitcoin drop to as low as $24,000? Okay, Bitcoin did not crash. What you saw was a flash wick, and it tells us a lot about how fragile crypto liquidity really is. So let's break it down. On Christmas Eve, so 24th of December, Bitcoin briefly dropped to $24,000 and $24,100, but only on one trading pair, that being BTC and USD1. Within seconds, the price rebounded right back into $87,000. So there wasn't any global crash, no massive liquidation happened, no system failure, just a really fast and very confusing moment. So this happened because of some low liquidity. Here's what that means in simple terms. Because it was Christmas Eve and most traders were offline, and especially when it comes to BTC versus USD1 pair, they had really few buy orders. Then someone placed a large sell order because there wasn't enough buyers in the market. The system kept selling lower and lower until it hit $24,000. So that's called a flash wick. This did not happen on the normal BTC and USDT pair or BTC versus USDC pair. It happened only on the USD1 pair, which is a newer stablecoin tied to Liquidity Financial, backed by the Trump family. Because it's new, liquidity is thin, fewer traders use it, and price moves faster. This makes it more fragile, especially during holiday season. So here's the key part. As soon as the price dropped, trading bots and arbitrage traders jumped in. They bought cheap Bitcoin on that pair and sold it elsewhere at normal prices. That instantly pulled the price back up. This whole thing lasted just seconds. And for CC, he did made a public statement. CC addressed this and said it was a microstructure issue. In fact, he said this actually proves the market works because price corrected itself without any intervention. He is directly addressing the rumor out there that CC or Binance is working very closely with market makers and backstabbing the users of Binance. However, this wasn't a Bitcoin problem. Bitcoin did not fail. It just exposed how fragile liquidity still is in crypto. And as liquidity returns in 2026, these kinds of moments will tell us who's really prepared. We're going to take a short break now, and when we come back, I'll be joined by a special guest who is building real-world Bitcoin adoption on the ground. So you won't want to miss this out. Stay with us.
Security matters. Zappo Bank, the only way to bank your Bitcoin. Apply now at zappobank.com.
Some call me Chicken Little, others Bubble Boy. I'm a bit changed, but sounds familiar, right? Let me tell you a hard truth. The S&P isn't rising, the dollar's falling. That's the trick. Monopoly money. It's ice melting by the second. Your savings, your salary, your time. Worth less every second. Everyone's using the wrong measuring stick. Switch the denominator. Price the S&P into Bitcoin. Hard, fixed, unprintable. Suddenly your unstoppable index, it's collapsing. And while you cling to dollars, well, Wall Street already switched. Before, you needed 2 brokers.
Still getting my ninja bonus though, right?
Plenty of spreadsheets. And my quant!
I hate this part.
I was right, and I'll be right again. If I were you, I'd thank me.
You know my name's Dave, right?
Welcome back, everyone. Today, I'm very excited to welcome Jimmy Costro, a builder who is doing some really meaningful work in the Bitcoin space. He is the co-founder of Bitcoin Chiang Mai, one of the biggest physical Bitcoin learning hubs in Asia, focused on real-world adoption and education. Jimmy has been working closely with local communities, universities, and even government groups to bring Bitcoin into everyday life. His work goes far beyond price. It's about freedom, resilience, and long-term impact. So, Jimmy, it's great to have you with us today. Well, yeah, welcome. So, since this is your first time on my show, like I noticed that you started in real estate in New York. So, I wonder what's first pulled you into Bitcoin. Could you share a little bit about your background?
I started actually in logistics. So I started a company called Meal Plan Delivery back in 2013, and then helped one of the largest same-day healthy prepared food providers grow to number 77 on the Fortune 5000 list. And I helped them scale to all these different markets. And then at that point, we had built this whole regional business into like a national business. And then I got operators stronger than me. I got a little bit into real estate. I started traveling in 2017 to Asia and Southeast Asia. And then now, fast forward, I've been out living here for 4 years, and I left America in 2017.
Yeah, I mean, it's great that you're doing all this traveling, but I wonder, was there like a great moment that you think, okay, Bitcoin might be is bigger than just money? Because what's happening for the general public is that they see Bitcoin as an investment. To that, like, was that the first reason that draw you in, or is more like the fundamental of Bitcoin, maybe perhaps the freedom of money? So, what was your story like?
So I got involved back in 2017, right after the block size wars. And like many people, I got in for the investment thesis. I saw an opportunity. I wasn't really sure what I was getting myself involved in. So I got involved in the casino, as they say, and quickly learned that there's no alternative to Bitcoin. I thought the objective in the beginning was to find the next Bitcoin. And then quickly within the first year or two after, I recognized that that was not the objective and that there's really only one number zero and one wheel and one fire. And so that started my path down learning what Bitcoin was. But I think the real captivating moment for me was when I learned about the difficulty adjustment and how the system survives on its own in a way every 2 weeks roughly. So this was like an aha moment. Like, wait a minute, this difficulty adjustment makes so much sense with the supply issuance and with the ability to not get ahead of itself or behind itself by reorganizing every 2 weeks. It was phenomenal. So that was a big moment, a penny dropping moment for me. And then as I move into Asia, and live here for so many years, the Bitcoin as like an investment thesis is more of a Western thing. But here, like I'm so close to Burma, I'm looking at the mountains right now. If you go back behind these mountains, just 50 kilometers, that's the border of Myanmar, and Laos is this way, and they have real problems. So, when you spend enough time here, you see it as a freedom technology, not just an investment thesis.
I wonder if there's a reason why you chose Asia to build all these like Bitcoin learning center, because I'm sure you have been traveling to different places, right? Is there a reason that you chose Asia as the major continent?
Yes. So one of the main reasons, specifically Thailand and specifically northern Thailand and Chiang Mai, is because of the safety. It's extremely safe here. And as a Bitcoiner, that's one thing that you're really looking for is your physical safety, your surroundings, your environment. Of course, the typical things, the weather, the quality of life's very laid back, the food, but also I'm able to live this quality of life for 300% less than the cost of living in America. So when I decided to leave in 2018, I said, wait a minute, I could stack 300% more sats by the geo arbitrage of living somewhere that is just as comfortable, healthier, cleaner, safer, the temperature's right. So it was a no-brainer. So that was a big incentive and motivator to come out here to Southeast Asia. And of course, in Thailand, the people are tremendous, so welcoming and kind, and that makes it very easy to stay here.
Yeah, I mean, I love that. I travel to Thailand quite often as well, so I get what you mean. So I wonder, like, when you first get to Asia, when you talk to the Bitcoin folks in specifically in Thailand, do you see any misconception that maybe Asian have towards Bitcoin, or is generally more acceptive compared to Westerner mindset?
Well, unfortunately in Southeast Asia, especially Burma and Vietnam, it's like a big scam center. There's a lot of the scam activity comes from these regions. And so the people, the local citizens are very aware of all of this. So they have like a shield up against like any new potential thing that doesn't seem like it fits or something that they don't understand. So naturally, when you bring in Bitcoin and they've already had or heard of these negative experiences with other things, that it's a red flag right away. So right off the bat, we are having to articulate what this is, why we do what we do, what it is we're trying to achieve, why we're trying to help people, and differentiate ourselves from all of that other noise and nonsense.
Yeah, that's a really good point that you brought up because when I travel to all these conferences, especially in Asia, I feel like Asian people, they're looking for the exponential gains in the financial aspect a little bit more. But seems that you focus more on Bitcoin, I wonder how you could tell people and basically teach them to basically Bitcoin is different to all the rest of crypto. What's the pitch that you give to the retails in specifically in Asia?
Well, what we do is we boil it down to simplify it as easy as possible. We just say we're trying to help you learn about basic savings and modern finance. These words have really helped us with getting in the local universities, working with the local government to really boil down what it is. And when we express and explain inflation, like our brothers and sisters experience across the border, have experienced 300, almost 400% inflation over 5 years, they need a savings vehicle. And we explain that everything else, like for the first 6 years, there was just one blockchain. That's it. And after that came all of the copycats that are trying to solve for other things. And we believe that what's most important that could help the most amount of people is focusing on just one thing, and that is the broken monetary system, and Bitcoin being the solution. So we boil it down to basic savings, having a vehicle that people can save in, that anyone can access, that is easily able to be understood through just the lens of savings. Looking at it like you could have your checking account as your currency, or even USDT, because we're on the border region and that's effective. And then Bitcoin as your savings to help you against this inflation, especially in the region. So it is a little easier when we break it apart and say that they're trying to solve for video games, and there's all that ice cream and candy and cookies and all that exciting stuff over there that's really not solving anything useful, that's not truly secure. That foundation is not truly secure or decentralized. Meanwhile, Bitcoin's the opposite.
Yeah, that's a really good point you brought up. Bitcoin is acting more like like you say, more for saving or perhaps a saving account. And as you mentioned, you've worked with local governments and schools. Could you share a little bit more about that experience and perhaps like what surprised you the most when working with officials like them?
Yes, cool. So there's so many cool surprises. So we had created an event called the world's first Bitcoin half marathon, and it required the help of the local city because there was permits we needed, local zoning, road closures, bathroom. When you have thousands and thousands of people event, you have to get these approvals. So naturally, they wanted to know, what is Bitcoin? And we said, thank you for asking. And we put our strongest community leaders in their offices, in their buildings, at their locations to help educate. We ended up having 20 meetings with them over the course of 9 or 10 months. We ended up teaching about self-custody, why Bitcoin, what is Bitcoin. We call them Bitcoin safety classes to better understand how to protect yourself, and not to just randomly accept some links that people are sending you. So through that, one very fascinating, two really fascinating realizations was we had orange pilled the deputy mayor when he was a doctor before he inadvertently just became the deputy mayor. So that was super helpful because he had understood what it is. Now, he's not like super deep down the rabbit hole, but he has a general understanding, and he considers himself a Bitcoiner. That's one cool thing. One of the other deputy mayors recently told us that they were helping pay for their son or daughter's electricity bill about 10 years ago when they were mining Bitcoin. And she ended up holding about a dozen of these Bitcoins or something around that. Maybe a little less or more. It sounded like that. So by her like articulating kind of how many she had, we recognized she wasn't so deep down the rabbit hole of security and understanding how important this technology and this tool is. But that was super fascinating to know that we orange pilled the deputy mayor before he became the deputy mayor. And the other deputy mayor had mined Bitcoin in her family 10 years ago and held on to them and expressed that she gave a couple to her grandson or her grandniece not too long ago.
Yeah, I mean, I love that. And you often mention the decentralization aspect and running Bitcoin nodes. So I wonder, like, okay, maybe it's technical, but it's a very simple question. Like, why does decentralization matter in real life? And particularly to you, like, is there any personal experience that you feel like decentralization is so important? Maybe you could share to our audience.
Sure. I mean, if you look at like the problems of centralization, you see where everything breaks and everything cracks, and then the few are in control of everything. So like, I think decentralization is critical. We think not only that should everybody run a node, and it's really not that hard. You should also plug in a bidax and mine the lottery. It only costs maybe a few cents or maybe one bot per day in electricity cost. Like distributing this all around gives power back to the people. And like, how is that not inspiring? When you see that all of these problems come from centralized control or centralized systems that could easily just turn us on and off. So by decentralizing everything as much as possible, we start bringing the power back to the people, and we now have a seat at the table because we're decentralized, because we have this power. If we didn't, and everything's on Amazon Web Service, like a third of Ethereum is, then we don't have that seat at the table, or we really don't have the four legs on the chair to sit in to talk about it. So, I mean, it's super critical. I don't think everyone technically has to run a node. I think if you're interested and you go down the rabbit hole and it's affordable, you should. We're here to teach that. The Bitcoin Learning Center. This is like I believe the most active Bitcoin hub in the world. And we teach people about everything. People come through here every day. There's someone here right now, like a visitor that we never met. It's totally crazy. So when we see the people come from around the world, it's this big decentralized effort that not just like me, Jimmy believes in this. It's like there are hundreds of thousands of passionate Bitcoiners that share the same ethos, that share the same vision, and understand the critical nature of having a decentralized, secure, permissionless asset like Bitcoin.
I absolutely love what you're doing in Bitcoin Learning Center and being one of the biggest in not just Thailand but in Asia. So when a newcomer go to one of your meetings, like is there anything you try to educate them? Like what mistakes should a new Bitcoin builders avoid? Like you mentioned safety, that's great. But what about from a Bitcoin builder's perspective? Because I noticed you mentioned a little bit about multi-sig. Could you share a little bit more in that as well?
Sure, of course. So we have two different camps that come here. There's the international people that come here, and then there's the Thai national people that come here. So for our Bitcoin education, we have local bit devs for technical people. We have our What is Money, Broken Money classes for beginners. But really, like, what the big picture is this: everyone that comes here is at a different place on the wheel. Like their experience or their exposure to Bitcoin or their journey, they're just not on the same place. So we've got to be open to everyone, and we want to try to have something for everyone. So we recognize that the international people that come here are typically further along because they've came out of their way to find us to come here, and that's just been our experience. And then the locals are still learning. It depends. We've got a lot of locals that are very talented and very skilled. So we have roughly 250 members or active people that regularly come to the Bitcoin Learning Center. And that means that we have to have the space for big events like Christmas. We had over 100 Bitcoiners here. When we say like, oh yeah, the most active Bitcoin hub in Thailand, it's like, it's like the most active Bitcoin hub in the Eastern Hemisphere and probably the Western Hemisphere. It's kind of really cool to be in that position, like because it's a magnet and it brings people from all over the scope, or every area of the rainbow. People come here, so it's super awesome to be that magnet. But to answer your question about like multi-sig, this is huge. Like we love to teach about multi-sig, and when there's enough like interest, we'll have a class put together. If it's 5 or 6 more people, it's worth doing. We're super flexible about, you know, how and when. You know, we do so many things here. It's remarkable. Like our Bitcoin, our Thai education podcast reaches over 2,000 people every single day in Thai, which is remarkable. We've been to platform several times on Facebook, but Thailand is the #2 top users of Facebook. So you got to go where they are. Our latest Facebook page, we started in May, has reached 20,000 followers already, which is remarkable. You know, being that we work with 3 major universities, that we have MOUs with these universities, and that we just brought Plan B, the world's top best education, Bitcoin education. We walk them in the door. We help them get MOUs. We bring in the largest exchanges. I mean, like, this is just like part of what we do. We do these huge sporting events. So now we bring so many people together. The marathon had 3,000 people running around in orange shirts saying, it had their family asking, what is Bitcoin? It had over 13 million impressions before the Bitcoin half marathon and 20 million impressions overall. I mean, like, we've got developers that walk through the door that show us projects before they have a pitch deck. And I'm just like blown away by how remarkable some of these projects are. We go into the hill tribes. We do help disadvantaged communities. Like, so there's so much to it. Like, so teaching about multi-sig, if they've got maybe a bigger stack and they're a little worried about having it on a single signature, we help them with that. They want to know why, we help them with that. They want to know something more technical, we got a group for that. They want to know it in English, they want to know it in Lao, they want to know it in Burmese, they want to know it in Thai. We got something for that. So we've just became like this awesome hub of innovation under Bitcoin.
That is truly amazing of what you do, and especially the international aspect you bring to the learning center from different countries. So not just the West, but also different parts of Asia. So since that we are both in Asia, I'm in Hong Kong, and I travel to Asia quite a lot. What I witness is that Asia kind of have this exponential growth when it comes to digital asset usage. So do you see a tipping point that maybe Asia gonna overtake the West maybe in the next 5 to 10 years? Or you think the West is still gonna lead the way when it comes to the Bitcoin road?
This is such a good question. You know, we have a real need for it, like an actual need to have Bitcoin, to have a stable coin, because the currency instability, and people can't just go out and store their money in expensive art or even an apartment. They can't afford these things. They can't afford to buy gold, because when you buy a small amount of gold, there's such a high premium. So here in Asia, there's 4.8 billion people that really, and in China, the capital controls, like these tight levers make people really want to learn about alternatives. So I see from a real use case, like we need it. I think also that in the West, they need it, especially when people are recognizing their wages and salaries are not keeping up with inflation, that they can no longer go out to eat like they used to or afford to buy as many clothes as they used to. You know, they're looking for real solutions. And I think that it's a fascinating question to see, you know, will the East like leapfrog the West? I don't know. Do I think that there is a race on the nation level, nation state or sovereign level? I think there is. I think countries like Burma or Myanmar, it's like a blue ocean. It's a huge opportunity because of the crisis and the war that happened and where they're geographically located. And I like to say the good guys and the bad guys need Bitcoin. You know, this is a ground that could really start on Bitcoin standard and see such tremendous things happen to such a broken country. So yes, I'm fascinated. I'm hopeful for there to be a very healthy competition with the East and the West.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. At the end of the day, everyone needs Bitcoin and every nation around the world needs Bitcoin. Maybe for different reason, but we all gonna come down to that path at some point in the future. So we were moving towards the end of the interview. Like, is there anything our viewers could look forward to? What's coming next for Bitcoin Chiang Mai in 2026, or any new education programs you would like to share to our audience?
Sure. Yeah. Thank you for asking. So there's breaking up just a little bit. So let's make sure it's my Wi-Fi. Are you there?
Yes, I can hear you perfectly well. Can you
Okay,
hear me?
because I'm a little frozen. Okay, that's better now. Yes. So there's so many cool things we have going on. I think the number one thing that we have is we're really merging sports and Bitcoin, and we felt that is an inevitable thing that's going to happen anyway. And through sports, we're able to bring so much greater awareness and exposure to Bitcoin and what is Bitcoin, build a larger community around this. I think that if I have any suggestions for people, it's come here, come see what we're working on, see if it's as active as we say it is. See what events we're working on, how big they are, what developers are working on, how we can help you and your journey. There's quite a bit of fascinating projects we do outside of Bitcoin that all fall into because of Bitcoin. We help build water wells, Wi-Fi in villages, bathrooms, dormitories, kitchens, schools, churches. We contribute where we can. We lead by example. We help people ask the question, who is this guy? Why are these girls like this? We're a team of 6 people here. Like, one of the most fascinating things is, and I'm so grateful every day to be able to work here, is that most people don't know that we exist. They might have heard of El Salvador or Bitcoin Park in America, but really, like, we're this secret, not secret, but very quiet, just plugging away, working every day on trying to make Bitcoin reach more people. And it's such an empowering, inspiring experience that I really want you to come and see what it's like.
Yes, so thank you so much for sharing that. So, if our viewers are desperate to know more about how Bitcoin and sports combine together, or maybe they want to know more about your perspective on Bitcoin, where's the best way to reach out to you?
Type in Bitcoin Thailand anywhere and you'll find us. You can find me. I'm pretty active on X under Jimmy Castro. I mean, that's probably the best way. We have a Bitcoin Ultra Marathon that we're about to announce that no one knows about, only on Roxom right now. On Roxom, we're able to tell you that we're launching the world's first Bitcoin Ultra in September, and we're just finalizing the documents for that right now. That's going to bring a massive international exposure. It's super elite competition level. There's going to be thousands and tens of hundreds of thousands, millions of impressions will be drawn from around that. We have Bitcoin Trail Run, which is coming up. We got our Bitcoin Half Marathon coming up. So we're bringing in sports. It's easy to find us. You can just type in Bitcoin Marathon or Bitcoin Thailand, and you easily can find us.
All right, guys, so you hear the man, Jimmy Castro, from Bitcoin Chiang Mai. Jimmy, truly thank you so much for your time, and I hope to see you in person sometimes.
Thank you so much for your time.